Hey there, welcome back to The Last of Us, Surviving the Super Apocalypse by Keith McNally, as read by the author. There's a parked train behind me that could start moving at any moment and will no doubt scare the shit out of me when it does, so let's all look forward to that. As I explain at the start of each chapter, I'm recording this on a beach in beautiful British Columbia, Canada, because I'm an idiosyncratic man and I like to be able to yell and be a fool. So I found this weird spot near a train yard where no one's around so I can yell into the heavens and no one is around to mock and belittle me for my bizarre and antisocial behavior. So the idea is I wrote this book about The Last of Us, which you can get at keithcourage.com for free in a variety of digital formats. And it's also on Amazon for not free if you want to put magical money into my magical pocket because you're a kind and gentle soul. But I really don't mind at all if you get the free version. I just think it would be cool if people read this book. The idea is I wanted to test my mettle in The Last of Us, so I beat the whole game without picking up any items, with the small caveat that I did pick up, I think, 3 things. In this very episode, if I remember right, I pick up a brick, and it's shameful, and at the end I go back and right these wrongs and prove that I did not need to do such a thing. In this case, I believe it was the, those tripwires that are set up in Billstown. I could have shot them, but I was scared. I was a little scaredy cat, and I'm like, but I'm going to need those bullets for the gym bloater. I can't punch him to death. So I picked up a rock, but what I figured out later is that I am at full life. I can afford to walk into one of those and not die. And that's what I do when I go back the second time. Just stuff I didn't think of the first time. But basically, 99.9999% of the time, I don't pick up anything. And that's just as a way to examine the mechanics of this game from a different perspective. I mean, I talk about the story and the characters a lot also, but in order to get a fresh perspective on the mechanics, I thought this would be a weird and cool thing to do. Maybe cool is the wrong word, but certainly weird is not. So thank you for joining me, and let's get into it, shall we? We have just left Boston. Tess has unfortunately died. The duo of Joel and Ellie has just been cemented, and we are now in the woods outside the city on our way to Billstown. Outside the city, we jump ahead to the woods outside of Boston, and I've got full life again. Nice, I didn't expect that. Ellie asks Joel why he doesn't take her back to Marlene. Joel says Marlene's not necessarily going to make it, and that getting back into the city is nigh impossible. That's a pretty good explanation. It probably is easier to keep sallying forth toward Bill than it is to go back. We find our first reinforced spike pipe, which I don't pick up. Why wouldn't Joel pick that up? Because he just wants to strangle. He wants to use his bare hands all the time. You feeling better about this yet, Ellie? This guy ain't just a murderer. He's a boutique murderer. This is part of my continuing series of attempting to explain, to retcon reasons why Joel isn't picking up any items. Basically, he's an OCD, apocalypse-rattled freak who doesn't recognize the value of anything that isn't of him. He just wants the clothes on his back and that's it, because he's fucking crazy. Joel admits that he's never been here, as Bill has always come to them. That adds credence to the Joel can't get them back inside idea. He might not even know how. Joel is barely outside of Boston, and he's already in way over his head. The game keeps nagging me to press the select button to craft something, since I still haven't made that health kit that Tess gave me the supplies for. Maybe I should craft one just so that goddamn icon will go away. Billstown. We cross into Billstown proper, and Ellie starts getting more talkative. She hums as we look around. Maybe her first time being in the woods gave her a little boost. Abandoned buildings. If you look online for pictures of abandoned buildings, they look just like buildings in The Last of Us. Their basic shape remains, but nature reclaims structures amazingly quickly. It's fucking scary how fast things fall apart, but it's also really fascinating. That's one reason I love the feeling of this game so much. It's amazing to walk through this world where everything is just falling apart. If you look at pictures of abandoned buildings for long enough, you start to get a sense of how transient your life really is. None of this stuff is gonna last. If structures aren't constantly maintained or replaced with something new, they crumble. Of course, the people who used to live in these places are gone too. It's a nice trick of the human brain, how we don't think very often about how soon we're gonna die. In fact, if you bring it up, people get real up in arms about it. They say it's juvenile to focus on death. But I don't think juvenile is the right word, especially to describe something so incredibly terrifying. It's an idea that's so enormous, you can only get little glimpses of it. You only have little moments where you really see how short your life is going to be. And after that, you're going to be a dead body forever. Which even that's over-dramatizing the truth. You're going to be a dead body for a fucking speck of time, and then that's going to be gone too. I cut that, because why do I keep jumping in with my own commentary when the book in the very next paragraph says what I just said? This keeps happening over and over. It's like I don't trust myself. I wrote this book. Of course, whatever thought comes to mind is the same thought that came to mind when I wrote it, Keith. It's obvious. What is wrong with you? Your little author commentary is of little to no value. Why do you keep doing that? Again, I would like to reiterate that this is why I need to record my audiobook on a deserted beach, because I won't stop yelling. After that, you're going to be a dead body forever, and even that is romanticizing the situation. Your body ain't going to last that long. Thinking about this shit is the most scary thing in the world. Thank fucking Christ it's so easy to ignore it. If I was constantly fully aware that I was gonna die, I wouldn't be writing a book about a goddamn video game, I'll tell you that. I don't know what I'd be doing, probably clubbing in people's skulls and eating their brains. I would definitely try out the brain-eating life. I'd give it a solid couple weeks, see how I felt about it from there. But it'd be weird, is the point. If we really thought about what these abandoned buildings signify, we'd all go fucking insane. Oral tradition. Ellie sees an arcade machine and starts telling Joel about it. She hasn't played the game, but she heard about it from her friend Riley. In the American Dreams prequel comic, I should note that during the principal writing of this book, the Left Behind DLC was not out yet. It really took me a long-ass time to write this book, as evidenced most obviously, I guess, by the fact that it's fucking huge. It's a big-ass book. In the American Dreams prequel comic, Ellie and Riley are exploring an old mall at night. They go into an abandoned arcade and talk about old games that they couldn't possibly have played. It's cool to see games being passed on that way, as a kind of oral tradition. I could see that happening. Ellie doesn't know about ice cream trucks because who would talk about them? You remember those trucks that sold ice cream? In the apocalypse, of course that wouldn't come up. But I like the idea that video games are so gripping that people continue talking about them. American Dreams. Spin-offs are almost always weird, and comic book spin-offs in particular rarely catch the tone of the original work. The American Dreams prequel comic seemed that way to me at first. I like Faith Aaron Hicks's art, but it seemed a bit cartoony for a chronicle of the apocalypse. Then I reframed it as a chronicle of Ellie's memories, rather than as a direct retelling of events. That shift in perception made the comic work much better for me. When Ellie thinks back to earlier times in her life, it's reasonable that they might seem like a comic book. That idea of reframing often helps me out. The Shawshank Redemption is my favorite movie, with a close second being the Canadian werewolf film Ginger Snaps, and I'm not even kidding. But Shawshank does have a somewhat unreal, operatic tone. At some point, I realized that the tone of Shawshank is because it's not a direct retelling of events. It's a representation of Red's memories. So, of course, the guards are completely heartless, the warden is cruel, and Andy Dufresne seems larger than life, because that's how Red saw things. It's neat, right? I probably didn't come up with that theory, I probably read it somewhere. But until you prove that in a court of law or with a simple Google search, I'm gonna keep claiming it. Yeah, I'm sure I heard that somewhere else, but I don't remember where. That's such a good technique. It's such a good way to take something that's just a little bit over-stylized maybe and to just kind of make that seem appropriate. Light jogging. This book doesn't really have like a proper index of all, because there's so many little segments, but I just think that'd be funny to scan down the different topics, and it's like crazy apocalypse, cannibalism, brain eating, man versus man, light jogging. I like how Joel has varied running speeds. During fights, he really books it, but during exploratory downtime, he doesn't move very quickly. It helps set the pace, letting the player know that they should be exploring and soaking in the visuals. It's very easy for a video game environment to seem unreal when the player is darting all around it like a crazy person. Yeah, and that's something I didn't notice for a while. Like, you just kind of don't notice the finer details of games when you're just embedded in playing them. But yeah, I thought that was neat. Like, during the combat sections, Joel really runs fast, but yeah, when you're just exploring around, he goes real slow. And it's such a unique thing. Like, I still can't think of another game besides The Last of Us that delineates and differentiates between combat and exploration so clearly. Either games are just crazy combat gangbangs or they're walking simulators. And The Last of Us is both, You still get those nice moments of calm and like, let's just look at every little corner and let's soak in this world and let's look at these details. And then when it's time to fight, then it's time to fight. What a great goddamn game, man? So good. Tone control. Every once in a while, Ellie sings a little heavy metal riff. It'd be very easy for that to seem cloying. It's the kind of thing that I can't imagine finding endearing in any other game. But Naughty Dog breaks my preconceptions constantly. Any rule can be broken if you're talented enough. Ellie's singing seems legit, like she's just a weird teenager with impulses that she has a hard time keeping under wraps. If a song has been running through her head all day, and she's feeling fairly safe and a bit excited at seeing the outside world, that song's gonna slip out. I love that I can get so into this story, despite my adulthood status. It was a lot easier for me to get invested in stories when I was younger. Now, if I'm bored with something, I try to remind myself that I probably would have liked it when I was 16. But I don't need to do that with The Last of Us. The Last of Us totally works for me. Swearing. Here comes another completely out of the blue criticism of the great country of the United States of America. So prepare for that. People have commented on how often Ellie swears, which is something else that if you don't mind me saying, absolutely marks you as a weird, repressed American. Maybe other countries are hung up about swearing too, but around Canada, that Puritan stuff is a fully American attitude. Swearing is possibly the dumbest, most pointless thing in the world to get in a twist over. When I meet someone who gets upset about swearing, I feel like they've been the victim of parental abuse. They've been taught to feel uncomfortable and attacked by something that absolutely does not matter. Those poor fuck faces. Whoa! Shit! There it goes. Fuck. See, I knew that was gonna scare the shit out of me. God damn it. Fuck. Okay, let's just finish this segment. What's great about Ellie's swearing is that when she's really surprised, she doesn't swear. When a clicker sets off one of Bill's tripwires, Ellie says, "Whoa, Nelly!" Oh man, that train, Jesus. Let me just go off script for a moment while this train slowly rumbles away. One thing that I learned about recently that is this really fascinating idea that has really kind of gripped my mind is, train's picking up speed, is the idea that in the specific example I heard, god damn, train on one side, waves on the other, okay, let's just wait. You're too loud! You're too loud! Okay, the train of terror has passed. Just to finish up that segment, what's great about Ellie's swearing is that when she's really surprised, she doesn't swear. When a clicker sets off one of Bill's tripwires, Ellie says, "Whoa, Nelly!" And that cracks me up because that's so opposite from her normal swearing, which is clearly somewhat of an affectation and not who she is truly deep down inside. But I'd like to add, this is a little thing that I would have put in the book if I had thought of this at the time, because I am all about going off topic in this book. I'm all about using The Last of Us to sidetrack onto various little topics. This thing that really kind of stuck in my head, it's like, oh, that makes so much sense. Where specifically this was about Japan. I was watching a YouTuber some dude who lives in Japan who's not from Japan, and he was discussing how the world in general is like wildly more individualistic than it ever has been in the past. But there's still quite a large difference between countries that value individualism, North America especially, and those that don't. Like, they're just a lot more collective, a lot more conformist. And this guy brought up that in Japan he notices a lot of times like kids that are real assholes, like they're bullies, they're just bully kids, and how it's not only tolerated, but it's actually, like, he suddenly came to realize that that's actually valued. That's actually behavior that is subtly or not so subtly reinforced, because the value of a bully, the utility of a bully in the social fabric is that they maintain order. If you're acting outside of the norm, if you're acting outside of the way that your social group is supposed to act, or that the greater good has decided is the way to be, the bully is the one who puts you straight, who sets you in line. You're acting different, you're acting weird, I'm gonna shame you in front of everyone, and I'm gonna make your life hard unless you start acting like everyone else. And that was such a kind of watershed moment for me. I'm like, holy shit, that makes sense. That totally makes sense. And I really feel like that ties into swearing. I mean, I've always had a keen interest in swearing because it just never made sense to me. My mom used to get on me and my brother, like, don't swear. And she was like of the last generation that was like, I'm gonna spank you and I'm gonna fucking wash your mouth out with soap. God damn, that happened to me so many times, because she just came from this really weird 12 brothers and sisters, giant Catholic family, stupid ass east coast of Canada, you know. They're all very nice people and I like all my relatives, but I mean, it's almost from a different era, you know. It just feels really weird and different, Dickensian almost. So she had no problem jamming a bar of soap into her kids' fucking faces. But none of it makes any sense now that we're adults, now that I'm an adult and she's also an adult. She swears all the time. She's not even that person. Like, she's not the person that cares about swearing. And it's like, where did this come from? And it's just because that's sort of what society wanted, that it's not acceptable for her kids to run around swearing because it reflects poorly on her. She had a lot of friends from church, even though she's not particularly religious either, but it's just like, these kids are not allowed to swear. It's not allowed. And I really think that's, when people get upset about swearing, that's all that's happening. That's what it is. It's the same idea as these bullies in Japan. It's just that you're not actually doing anything that matters. You're not hurting anybody. It doesn't matter. It's just words. But by using these words, you are basically announcing yourself as outside of the system of just whatever it is that you think is important, whatever it is that you're up to, whatever tradition you wish for me to carry forward, I will not. And I will express that by using the word motherfucker. You know, that's all it is. That's all it is. It's so simple and so primate, simian nonsense bullshit. But that is it, man. That's it. When someone gets upset about swearing, that seems to be all that it is, as far as I can determine, is that it's just a code. It's just the code word for, I am trying to maintain a status quo and you are not respecting that status quo. And I will attempt to shame and bully you into doing what I want. And fuck that! You know? So if you get upset about swearing, I don't know how the hell you're listening to this, but fuck you. Fuck you, you moron. You're a fucking idiot. You're a dumb little dummy. You're a dumb little grub. You're a silly little part of a collective, and you don't have your own thoughts, and you don't have your own direction in life, and you can fuck off. So, take that, Grandma. Take that. That's what you get for listening to my audiobook. That's what you get, and you deserve it for towing the line. You can eat my balls. Okay, this is getting weird. Let's get back on script, shall we? Exploring Billstown. This crafting notice is driving me nuts. I'm about to craft a health kit just so it'll go away, but I realize I can also craft a Molotov. With a Molotov and my 4 bullets, can I kill that bloater in the gym? I know he takes extra damage after being set on fire. I'll have to melee the other infected around him, but it might be enough? Molotov it is. My crafting inventory is now empty, and I've crafted my first ever Molotov. Because as I discussed way back at the start, I always played this game on the harder difficulties. I was always up against item scarcity, so I always opted to craft a health kit. I had never crafted a Molotov before. There's the bow, and there's Joel walking past the bow. We find a building off the main path that can be explored, and Ellie comments, "You're gonna go in there?" I love the way the characters react to the environment. She's right, there's really no reason to go in that place, especially since I'm not picking up items. But I go inside anyway, just to hear their dialogue. Inside is a note from Ezra to Rachel, which says he'll meet her in the quarantine zone. Ellie asks Joel if he thinks they ever found each other, and Joel says, how the hell would he know? Ellie says she'd like to think that they did. It's interesting that Joel doesn't deny the possibility. He just wants to stay out of it entirely. Oh, here's the part where I pick up it's a bottle, not a brick, but you know, they're the same. Outside, I have to pick up a bottle to get past some tripwires. To be crazy hardcore, I guess I could have just walked into them. I thought I was doing a pretty severe playthrough, but I keep thinking of ways that I could make it even harder. The super duper apocalypse. The whoa Nelly apocalypse. I use a brick to get past the next set of tripwires. Wow, I picked up a brick and a bottle. That second time was probably necessary, since I don't think I could survive walking into 2 tripwires. Unless I walked into the first tripwire and then used Tessa's supplies to create a health kit, used that, and then walked through the second tripwire. Damn it, I keep thinking of these solutions while I'm editing, and it's too late to go back. Ellie was standing wicked close to the tripwire explosion, and she got knocked back pretty far. If she could die from environmental hazards, I bet she would have right there. Imagine how that would feel for Joel. I met this girl who was immune to the cordyceps. I wasn't sure if I believed it or not. Then I set off a tripwire while she was standing too close, so... I don't know, let's just keep our histories to ourselves, alright? Oh, here's where my message from the future. As I continue through this playthrough, these early item gathering indiscretions will continue to weigh on me. Between the 2x4, a Molotov is, I say 2 bricks, but it was a brick in a bottle. That's a full 4 times that I broke my own no item rule. In hindsight, I could have avoided picking up all of these items. Honestly, I think this itemless playthrough kinda scared me. I didn't know if I could do it, so until I got more comfortable with the playstyle, I didn't stay as orthodox as I could have. If these little inconsistencies bother you as much as they bother me, don't worry, redemption is coming. I will eventually replay these areas and confirm that they are completable without picking up items. So if you're feeling the itch of some secondhand OCD, don't worry. Before this book is over, I am gonna right these wrongs. That is my solemn promise to you as president of No Item Last of Us playing. Bill's trap. Joel's leg gets caught in Bill's fridge trap, leaving him hanging upside down. A tutorial for weapon slotting comes up. That's weird timing. And I've only got 1 weapon, so I don't know what that's all about. I noticed that if you let the infected run right up to you, they'll never hurt you. You push them off, and the game lines up an automatic headshot afterward. So that's what I do. 1, 2, 3, 4, and there go all my bullets. But Joel has infinite bullets during this encounter, and the game doesn't show your ammo levels, so you can't see the inventory fudging that's going on. Maybe I'll actually come out of this with more bullets than I had when I went in. I'll have to try to reload right before the end of the encounter, to make sure I don't come out with even fewer bullets than my initial 4. Note, the letting the infected run straight at you strategy does not, of course, work for clickers. So time for attempt number 2. Having all my stats at 0, my weapon sway is brutal. But I really do think this is better. Games are better when they're fucking with you. It makes you seem more fallible and more human. Maybe a video game character could stumble once in a while. I don't know, these things happen. Random aside. As I'm editing this section, I'm sitting in a food court on a Tuesday afternoon across from a video game store. I just glanced up to see a guy walking out with a new game. He took it out of the bag, looked at the back of the case, then kept walking. I wonder what game it was. He's on his way home to pop that bad boy in. It's gonna be a fun afternoon. I complain about games quite a bit, but only because when I love them, I super love them. Video games are cool. I don't know if I'm getting any better at narrating. I feel like I'm getting, if anything, even dopier. But I mean, it's my own fault. I'm the one who wrote this book so dopey. What am I supposed to do? I remember, though, that very store. It was in the Dufferin Mall in Toronto. And that's the same store where I bought The Last of Us. And I remember the day I went to buy The Last of Us, that morning, me and this other dude were buying it at the same time. I probably tell this anecdote later in the book, but we were both there picking up The Last of Us, and I just remember he was so excited. He's like, man, this is going to be great, right? I was like, yeah, it is going to be great. Like, fuck yeah, man, right on. Never saw that guy again. We'll never see him again, but we'll always have that moment where we were both excited about The Last of Us. Bill to the rescue. Bill introduces himself by driving his machete through a clicker's head. Nice to see you, Bill. God, I really wrote this book in like this Ward Cleaver weird style. But I guess what would be the alternative to write a super dry, super stale book about a video game? And this is the part where the blah, blah. Fuck that, man. Fuck that. I did what I had to do. I did what I had to do so that we would all make it here today. I punch out 2 other infected, Ellie even stabbing one in the back. Congrats, Ellie, on your first in-game monster stabbing. It should make things a lot easier having Bill around, and having Ellie ramping up into violence mode. I've also got 7 bullets now. Nice to see you, bullets. It's amazing that, with only the items that the game has forced into my inventory, I think I have enough firepower to take out that bloater. I really didn't expect that to be possible, but here we are. Cool. I still can't believe I picked up a couple things. I should have trusted in the good Lord above. Whoa! That's what the weapon swapping tutorial was for. I now have a revolver. Of course I do. How else could I have 7 bullets? The other gun only holds 6. Where did this new gun come from? I don't know. Magic gun. The designers must have gotten fed up with me not picking up weapons, so they were like, just take it, jerk. Take the fucking gun. A wizard did it. Whatever. There are 4 bullets in the old gun, 7 in this new one. Shit, I feel like a walking arsenal. I did take 1 point of damage somewhere in that battle, probably from falling to the ground, or maybe all the wrestling with the undead had an effect after all. During the winter section, Ellie takes one of Joel's pistols. That must be why the game forced this second pistol on me. Otherwise, it would mess with the continuity later on. That must have been weird in playtesting. Like, hey, what happens if someone never picks up the gun? And I'm sure they were like, what do you mean if someone never picks up the gun? Of course they're going to pick up the gun. Why would they not pick up the gun? It's like, well, what if they don't? We got to force it into their inventory somehow. Well, here I am. Nice to meet you. Someone did it. And it's me. Bill tells Joel to take out some infected, but one of them is a clicker. You got a gun, Bill. I think you should take him out. Random aside 2. Next to the video game store in the mall that I was talking about earlier is a fancy haircutting place. A hair studio. All the women who work there are hot. You know what? Leave out this fucking random aside too. That doesn't need to be in here. Bill. I really like Bill. He's got to be the most casually gay character ever, in the sense that it doesn't matter in the slightest that he's gay. He just happens to be gay. And he's a really believable model of a survivor. His choice to live alone, rather than deal with the politics of post-apocalypse society, makes a lot of sense. The notes he leaves and the way he talks to himself fit well for a guy who's alone all the time. I've never experienced that level of isolation, obviously, but I used to work in a projection booth, and I hardly saw anyone day after day. Even that level of isolation will make you start to go nuts. One day, none of the movies were starting on time, so a manager went upstairs to investigate. They found the poor projectionist sitting at a desk, crying her eyes out. Isolation is a tough thing. I feel pretty bad for Bill. The fact that he drove away his partner is definitely in line with his abrasive, demanding personality. But it's sad that he now lives alone in this giant, trap-strewn fortress. Even the fact that Joel doesn't tell him about Tess's death is sad. Tess was Bill's connection to the larger community, and she was critical for his survival. I get that Joel finds it painful to talk about these things, but don't let Bill wait at the drop point and have no one show up. Joel really is a fucking dick. Little things about Bill betray that he isn't as tough as he acts. I love how, right in the middle of a tense argument with Joel, Bill starts sharpening his knife. It's tough on the surface, but it's also a bit of a bitch move. He needs an excuse to turn his eyes away from the confrontation. God damn it, Bill is a good character. How is Naughty Dog this good? Fucking boggles the mind. I know that continually saying something is cool is not what would be traditionally categorized as criticism. But when something is this cool, it's gotta be said. Again and again, it should be restated. Everyone else has gotta up their game because this is the new example of how fucking cool a video game can be. Fallout 4. Sudden rant. In 2016, Fallout 4 won a Best Game Award at the BAFTAs. Get the fuck outta here. Fallout 4 is a piece of shit. Before its release, I was considering writing about my Fallout 4 playthrough. But after putting my time in, I've seen that there is no way I could have written a book about that shell of a game. The more I played Fallout 4, the more I felt like my fingers were glued together. Hey buddy, I'd really like to talk to you about what's been going on. No? You're just gonna say one thing and then wander away? Awesome. I sure wish some of my stats had some meaning beyond shooting things. Well, I guess I'll just go shoot some more, till I finally get fed up and uninstall this goddamn mess. The earlier Fallout games were about using your particular character to puzzle your way through situations. Fallout 4 is about not having to think at all. Just shoot, shoot, shoot. User reviews have shown that I am not alone. Fallout 4 has a massive number of users expressing their disappointment. And yet, Fallout 4 wins awards. The video game establishment is a ridiculous and disappointing place. So it's cool that The Last of Us won a lot of awards, but it's also clear that those awards really don't mean shit. Feels good to get that off my chest. Fucking Bethesda, way to suck, guys. Games media. While I'm ranting, I'd also like to mention how disappointed I am in the state of professional video game writing. Again, take Fallout 4. When it was released, every gaming site was swathed in Fallout 4 content. It bordered on absurd how much coverage there was. Then, after the dust settled, nothing. To be fair, it took a while to realize how much Fallout 4 had changed. I'm not faulting video games media for their initial hype, or even for their positive reviews. We were all very excited about Fallout 4, and I think we had reason to be. But in the longer term, I don't think Fallout 4 is a normal case of a player base being divided. User reviews on Steam and Metacritic are almost 50% negative. That's fucking insane. That is way, way more backlash than I ever dreamed a Fallout game would get. I was ride or die with Fallout, and now I don't give a shit about it. That's a pretty drastic change in opinion. But if you search for follow-up articles about Fallout 4, you won't find much. Where are the Fallout 4 What Happened articles? I found a couple of tepid references to player disappointment, but that's it. I had similar feelings about the press's handling of BioShock Infinite, which to me was also a massive disappointment. But BioShock is a much more subjective situation. Fallout 4 is literally missing the role-playing and situational adaptability that is the hallmark of the series. Negative reviews on Steam are not glib or hot-headed. They spell out in careful detail all the things that are wrong with that game. If that's not a story, then what are games writers actually doing? It might be unrealistic to expect a journalistic exposé or for someone to delve deep into the design culture of Bethesda Softworks, but there could at least be articles about the Fallout backlash. There could at least be journalistic acknowledgement that Fallout 4, while a financial success, was also a huge stumble in the eyes of long-term players. If there were enough of those articles, maybe Bethesda would respond. Maybe the journalistic arm of games media would serve some purpose. Games media has always been referred to as the enthusiast press, but it really does seem more like a marketing arm than it does any kind of legitimate establishment. We all get hyped for games, but hype is not journalism. It really bums me out, is what I'm trying to say. Danny O'Dwyer has a video called The Problems with Games Media and Why I Started NoClip, as part of his fan-funded NoClip project. In it, he describes the advertising model under which games media operates, and how we're circling the drain on that one. I agree strongly with his position. Sorry to all the games press who I'm probably offending. And really, that rant. That just, I mean, I get that has no place, really, in this book. It's just I was mad about Fallout 4 and how much it sucks. And this is the beauty of writing a book with no editorial guidance. But it's weird, right? It's weird. I wonder if I should do, like, a second edition of this book sometime that's, like, streamlined, you know? It doesn't have to have every single opinion that I ever had about video games in it. It could really be more about The Last of Us. Version 2. Maybe someday. Anyway, for now, speaking of not making friends, let's hang out with Bill. The Chess Bar. Bill handcuffs Ellie to a pipe as part of his rigorous defense against outsiders protocol. Ellie pulls the pipe free and really lets loose on Bill, verbally and physically. At least some of Ellie's outburst has got to be because she was having to be on her best behavior around Joel. Now there's finally someone she can unleash on. And Bill seems like a good guy to hit. Big guy, bad attitude. He could probably use a good smack with a pipe. Bill and Joel are both Southerners who have found themselves in Boston. That's one Southerner more than I would expect to find that far north. Does that suggest that the South is big-time fucked? I do wish I knew a bit more about Bill's history. He says the favors he owes Joel aren't worth a car, and Joel authoritatively states that, yes, they are. Did Bill start out living in the Boston QZ and strike out on his own? Or was he always on the outside? If so, how did he meet Tess? The specifics of this setup really intrigue me. In Night of the Living Dead, they board up a house. In Dawn of the Dead, they board up a mall. This seems like the next step. Bill has boarded up an entire town, like a weird spider in a giant makeshift web. Bill unlocks Ellie's handcuffs, and Joel tosses them on the floor, but Bill doesn't pick them up. That's weird. But maybe Bill doesn't mind leaving stuff laying around. I guess it's not going anywhere. While looking around the bar, I notice a little bit of dust fall from the ceiling. That is a ridiculously unnecessary level of detail. I love it. It's starting to feel less weird that I'm not picking up items. I'm starting to realize how doable this is, and it feels kind of good to leave the items behind. An upgrade manual? No thanks. A shiv? Fuck you, shiv. Remember how important the shivs seemed that first time through? Shivs seemed like everything. Then they got less and less necessary, and now I don't need them at all. What an incredibly dumb thing to be proud of. Hey, Mom, how you doing? Yeah, I'm all right. Oh, Grandma's sick? Yeah, that's great. Shut up for a minute. I've been playing this video game, and I'm getting so good at it. Like, so good. I'm doing things no one on the earth has done. Sure, I think about getting a job sometimes, but yeah, this is my real work. No, I don't know what you can tell Aunt Clarissa I'm doing. Tell her I'm a doctor. Tell her I'm dead. I don't care. I do remember, though, speaking of the shiv thing, I'm surprised I didn't bring this up in the book, which is a guarantee that it will come up later in the book. But the manual you get in the hotel in Pittsburgh that lets you get more than one hit with your shivs, it gives you like 2 or 3 hits or whatever with each shiv. 2 hits, I think. I missed that manual, and it was weighing on me so heavy for the whole game. Like, I heard about it somewhere, or I read about it somewhere, and I was like, what the fuck? I didn't get that. And I can't go back and get it, but I need that. How am I going to survive without that? And it just seems so funny compared to how I play now, where I'm just like, fuck it, I don't give a shit. Even I just played a little bit of Last of Us a little while ago at one of my friends' houses. And, I do pick up stuff, but not a ton. I'm just running all the time. Pick up a thing if it's in my way, but yeah, it's definitely the complete opposite of the old super hoarder mindset where anything that I missed was just like the biggest disaster of all time. Bill has left a very forceful note to himself about how important it is to clear the fences. The infected are piling up on the fences, Bill. Clear the fences, Bill. He must have pretty serious depression some days, being out here all alone in the midst of a world that's totally super mega fucked. It'd be easy to stay holed away, eating canned food and ignoring the overall state of his town. But if he doesn't clear those fences, soon there won't be fences at all. And one day an infected will knock down his door and tear his throat out. So clear the fences, Bill. There's a chessboard set up in one of the booths. I wonder if this is the last game of chess that Bill and Frank played. Or maybe it's a game Bill is playing against himself. Each time he comes through this way, he could play one move, alternating sides. With enough time between moves, that could be an alright game. Probably not as fun as having another person around, but these things happen. Since I didn't pick up that bow earlier, there's a new bow in the bar. Now I finally know what happens if you don't pick up the bow. The game adds more bows. It sounds dumb to say, but that kind of worried me. I kept imagining some dope who somehow missed the bow, and then had to play the whole game bowless. That's an inappropriate use of mental resources if I ever heard of one. Bill agrees to help Joel get a working car due to the many favors he owes Joel and Tess. He says, "Best stay right on my ass." That's one of those weird southern US expressions that's supposed to be tough, but just sounds weak. They've got a bunch of those. I always wonder if that southern, dorky yet tough attitude is partially deliberate, like a challenge. Yeah, I said something real lame. What are you gonna do? You got the balls to call me on it? Or maybe we up north just have a different idea about how a tough guy should talk. I don't know if that part's even clear, but I mean, like, it's so weird when you hear people just say, I can't even think of one, but just like, "Oh man, I was happier than a hound with a gopher in his teeth." Like, it's stupid shit. And they just think that's a cool way to talk. It's not cool. It's the opposite of cool. Trust me, I know. All right, there's another bit of the book down. I'm sticking with this idea of doing shorter episodes, so that means we don't really get through too much of the game, especially with my many highly relevant side rants like fucking Fallout 4. Again, let me reiterate, put out this book some time ago. And this audio version, it's going very slow, but I'll just keep picking away at it for the rest of my goddamn life, for the next zillion fucking years. But in between audiobook releases, I'm still just putting out other random video game stuff. Just to, experiment with things, try some different stuff. So the next one is I chronicled my first time playing a Yakuza game. It's kind of cool because I was a Sega kid. I grew up with a Sega. And Sega sure did die a hard death. It was cool to go to Japan and to see giant Sega arcades and the big Sega sign taking up like a whole block. And it's like, whoa! It's like a vision of the future that never happened. Like, imagine if Sega really was still like that. If anyone still gave a fuck about Sega. But one of the few series that people still give a fuck about is Yakuza. I was always curious to try it. So I played Yakuza Kiwami and recorded a thing about it. So that'll be coming up next on this feed. Then more Last of Us. So thank you for joining me. You can head to keithcourage.com to get a copy of the book, or check out whatever other random ass podcasts and shit that I'm doing. So thank you for listening, and adios.